In today's video, we're going to be discussing the two enemies of retirement. Both of these can be planned for. That's what we're going to talk about next. Hey, this is Mel Stubbs. I'm a financial planner with Christy Capital Management. I'm here with Brandon Christy. He's president and financial planner with Christy Capital Management. And we're talking over two enemies in retirement and what can we do to plan for that. And so the first one is inflation. And inflation has been all over the news here recently. It's really something that you got to pay attention to. So I looked up on an inflation calculator and found out that back in 1913, if you had $1 back in 1913 compared to today, today it would cost you $29.93 for that same dollar. And so that's an cumulative inflation of 2,893%. Inflation has been that bad over the last 89 years. But if we fast forward some, we got from 2015 to 2022, inflation is 25%, meaning a dollar is now worth $1.25. So since the average retirement's around 30 years, I look back from 1992 to 2022 to find that $1 back in 1992 would now cost you $2.11, which is an 111% increase. As you're planning for retirement, you have to factor in inflation because things are going to cost more. What are your thoughts on inflation?
Yeah, it's been heavy. It is a serious thing that has to be addressed, and it can erode away your buying power in retirement. And then what, right? The idea behind retirement is you're no longer working, earning money. And if you spend down your assets too fast, you could inflate away your ability to enjoy the comfortable retirement most people want.
Yeah, and so the risk of inflation means that things are going to cost a lot more later. So there's some things you can do now to offset that. What are some things that people can do now to offset inflation?
Yep, live within their means, right? Control the expenses that they have would be a key element. Simplify life. Save enough so that your assets can hopefully long-term keep pace with inflation, right? If inflation is averaging, pick a number, 5%, if your investments can earn 6 or 7%, this is by no means a promise or guarantee, just a number that we're talking about, then you can outpace inflation while still drawing from assets to some level. So you need a plan to make all of that work. But that's some things you can do.
Right. And something I've seen is we'll talk to some people that maybe get overly conservative and they are worried about stock market risk. And so they want to take all of their money and make it really conservative. But now you introduce inflation risk. If your money does not earn enough, you need to have more money 20 years from now than you have now to pay for things. And so you do need to continue to earn enough to offset that risk of inflation. So most of the people watching this are going to be a federal retiree. And so just so you know, your federal pension does have cost of livings built in. So they will be increasing over time. Now, will they keep up fully with inflation? Probably not, but they will increase some over time. Most of you will be receiving Social Security. Those also have cost of livings built in. Now, will they keep up with inflation? Possibly not. I'm also hearing people complain that, yes, I got a raise in my Social Security, but the cost of Medicare went up so much, I didn't feel it because they took it. So, both of those, if you had a pension, a federal pension, and Social Security, they do have cost of livings built in, but, will it fully keep up? Maybe not. So then let's move on to your assets. You need your assets to grow enough to offset inflation over time. So some of the problems are if you get overly conservative, over time that could be a problem. So definitely, with your pension, there's something built in to help with that. With Social Security, there's cost of livings built in. And with your assets, you need to allocate your money in a way that suits your risk tolerance level, where you can sleep at night. But you also need to make enough to be able to offset inflation over a 30-year retirement.
We often consider that aggressive part of a portfolio the piece that can hopefully outpace inflation over time. So like you said, we have to be real careful not to create too much risk in a portfolio for what someone can sleep at night with. But at the same time, if we do have some elements that can have higher levels of risk, they tend to perform better relative to inflation over time. So that's a good thing, I think. So let me jump into the second enemy in retirement, and that would be taxes. Yes, as a CPA, let's all say the word together, right? Taxes. And so are taxes high or low now relative to the future? That's the question, right? Here's what we've all been told. Save in your TSP or your 401k and don't pay taxes now while your tax rate and income is higher, but wait until you retire, then pay the taxes, and you'll have a much lower tax bill. You'll actually save taxes in that situation, right, Mel? That's what everybody's told. And then as we have lived for years and years now with retirees, as Mel pointed out, particularly federal retirees that have these wonderful, robust pensions, it turns out that their income doesn't necessarily drop down very dramatically, and they've got pension, Social Security, other elements. And when they start drawing from their retirement account, they end up paying the taxes very similar, sometimes more, than they paid while they were working. It's a unique phenomenon that we have to consider. So the real question here for you is twofold. One, will taxes be lower in the future as a whole? And then second, will taxes be lower for you in the future? So to talk about the taxes as a whole, let's look at the top marginal tax bracket throughout history. You'll see this beautiful graph of taxes going up and going down. And Mel, talk us through why this bracket was so high, who was affected by it way back when, and go from there.
Well, if you know what's the highest it's ever been, it was 94%. I'm sure that was a lovely time to live. If you'll see, during the 1970s, the top bracket was 70%. It came down in the 80s under Reagan. It kind of went back up. But the thing is, if you look historically, taxes are on the lower end, historically speaking. But if you ask people, how are taxes? Most people say, oh, they're just awful. Like, taxes are awful. Historically, they're not awful. And if they go back to historical norms, it means tax rates would go up.
Very good point. Thank you, Mel. That's great. And way back when those high tax rates were in place, there was an actor who would only cut about 2 films a year because he'd make $100,000 a movie. After 2 movies over $200,000, the tax rate was some 94% or what have you. By the time he paid California tax, he made nothing. That was Ronald Reagan, who just did that 2 times a year. So thankfully, those rates are lower than they were in decades past. So we have to think about that relative to your future. We're talking your 20, 30, 40-year retirement. Will taxes go down in general? Do you believe that? Most people, when I ask that question, point to the national debt. And by the way, what are our 2 ways to get out of debt? Well, inflation is one. Oh, and taxes is the other. So yes, the very 2 enemies you have in retirement are the 2 tools, the 2 main tools the government has to make debt more manageable as we rack up trillions and trillions of debt. So we have to consider the idea, the option that taxes could go up for you. If that happens, maybe paying taxes now versus later could put you in a better position. Now, again, I'm not giving tax advice for individuals to act upon here today. You need to seek professional help to get this advice. But what we know in general is that if taxes go up, you pay more. That would not be as good as you paying your taxes now to pay potentially less. So as a society, we have that one issue. Second, what about you? Will your tax rate go down? Have you analyzed what your income is today and your tax rate now versus when you retire, what your tax rate would hypothetically be then? Now, we can't be promised the future. We can look at current numbers and do the math. And Mel, you've done that for a lot of individuals, have you not?
Yes, I think the big takeaway is your lifetime tax bill. How can we get your lifetime tax bill to be as low as it can? And it may be that you need to pay some taxes now on a smaller balance rather than paying a potentially higher rate later on a potentially larger balance. And so the name of the game is, how do we get the lowest lifetime tax bill for you? And some of that's going to be some planning and doing Roth conversions. How does the Roth conversion work?
Hey, great word. So I'm going to use the word again, Roth conversion. The IRA or the traditional TSP says don't pay tax now, pay later. The Roth says pay your tax now, don't pay later. And so would you rather pay tax on the seed that you plant in the ground or the harvest that comes up later? Time after time, people say, well, I'd rather pay tax on the one seed than on the 800 or what have you that's on the cob. And so with that differential, that would be the Roth. Pay the tax on the one seed, get the rest tax-free. So to do that, you Roth convert, meaning you take your existing taxable money, pay the tax on that money, and put it into a Roth account, and it will grow tax-free from there as long as you follow the certain regulations that come along with Roth. So you have to be careful. Again, this is not tax advice because you have to be able to pay the taxes to make that happen, and you need to make sure it doesn't affect other elements of your tax return. But it can be huge savings, not only just in the amount of tax you pay in retirement, but it could also affect other elements of your tax return. Did you know that in retirement, when you're drawing Social Security, your total income, which includes your IRA withdrawals or your TSP withdrawals, is part of a determination to see if your Social Security is taxable? What a mess. That's the way the system works. But if you draw from a Roth IRA, you don't have to pay tax on the Social Security elements. It's a beautiful opportunity to do that. And if your income climbs too high, you could pay extra costs for Medicare once you're on Medicare. That Medicare extra premium can be nasty. It can double or more the cost of Medicare in retirement. How does that happen? Because if you add your pension, your Social Security, and IRA or TSP withdrawals, you can be thrust right over limits and have to pay even more tax. So be careful as you think about that enemy of taxes in retirement. Make sure you're accounting the full cost as best you can of all the things that will be applicable to your tax return into the future in retirement. Be wary, be careful, seek professional help. Mel, you have closing thoughts?
Let me define a few terms so we don't get confused. A Roth conversion is taking traditional money, paying taxes on it, and moving it to Roth. A Roth contribution is you writing out like a check from your checking account, new money to a Roth account. In retirement, if you don't have earned income, you can't do a Roth contribution anymore, but you can do a Roth conversion. And you can do a Roth conversion up to any amount that you want to. Now, your tax bracket will limit how much you want to do. Any amount that you Roth convert, you're basically adding that to your income, and you will start moving up the tax bracket. So you will limit yourself, but technically you can do as much as you want to do. Another key takeaway to remember is if you want to do a Roth conversion, you say, this sounds great, I want to do that. Well, the TSP doesn't let you do it. If you're in a traditional 401k at work, you need to check. A lot of them don't let you do this higher level tax planning. So at either retirement or at age 59 and a half, you can then move your money out of the company plan, out of the TSP, into an IRA, and then you can implement some of these tax planning procedures.
Thank you, Mel. That was a great add-in. So thank you for joining us today as we have discussed your two main enemies in retirement. Make sure you are building a plan that is effective in working the battle against taxes and inflation. At Christy Capital Management, it will be our honor to assist you in sound financial planning. Give us a call at the number on the screen or visit ChristyCapital.com, and we'd love to serve you. Until next time, this is Brandon Christy.
And I'm Mel Stubbs. We'll see you on the next video.
We need to do the proper disclaimers. The purpose of this video is not to give specific tax advice or investment advice. We're going over general principles and ideas that can be used, and if used correctly, can save and avoid taxes. You're going to want to work with someone personally who knows your situation personally, so seek out advice from an independent financial advisor. This is for educational purposes only. I hope you enjoyed the video.